Hello, my friends. Welcome. My name is Joe. This is the Joe Martino Show. And today I'm going to talk about how our words shape our reality and reflect how we create our own system, how we view it, how we often get stuck with them, and how maybe we can set ourselves free. Let's kick it off. This is the Joe Martino Show.
You're listening to The Joe Martino Show, a podcast dealing with all things emotional, relational, and human nature. Joe is a licensed counselor in the state of Michigan, specializing in relationship therapy. He is also the author of the book, The Emotionally Secure Couple. All advice offered in this episode is offered for entertainment and educational purposes only. Enjoy the show.
Hey, friends. Hello. Welcome. I hope your day is going well wherever your day is. I hope that you are having a great day. We're going to talk today about why I am so pissy about language, right? And sometimes people are like, Joe, you just kind of pick on words. And it's true, I do. Like anytime I hear somebody say, oh, that makes me, I jump in. I'm like, nope. Yesterday I had a client telling this story, and it was a long story, probably 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes. And in the middle of it, she was like, and he made me feel guilty. And I was like, whoa, stop right there. You can't say that, not in here at least, because he didn't make you feel guilty. We can say that he guilt tripped you, that he invited you to feel guilty, but you get to control your language and you get to control your emotions. And one of the things that is really important is that we understand that language reflects our way of thinking, and language shapes our way of thinking. And those two things live symbiotically together. And so we want to talk about that today. So that's just one example of kind of the words that I'm constantly thinking about, I'm constantly aware of. For my church friends, we'll often say, worship, we're going to go worship God. And what we really mean is we're going to sing and we're going to praise him, which is totally fine. But worship is much more expansive than that. Incidentally, if you're on TikTok and you want to follow my Hiding Behind God book journey and kind of engage in more spiritual conversations, hopefully you're reading hidingbehind.god.substack.com. Also, I have a new TikTok which will be unveiling next week. It will be coming out on Monday, the 27th. Will be the first 5 videos will drop. And what I'm gonna do there is have a lot of conversations about stuff like this. But again, words, when people use the word worship, will you worship with me? And what they mean is sing. What they're doing is they're creating a reality in people's heads that worship is singing and singing is worship. And in reality, when I go cut my grass later today, that is also worship. When I go to work, that is also worship. When I go to on a date with my wife, that is also worship, especially if my heart posture is correct. When I talk about politics with people, I had a fun conversation with someone last week who we probably disagree on a lot, but we had a fun conversation about politics, and it was done in such a way that it was warm and inviting, and we passionately disagree, and that is worship. And words matter because they shape your reality. How you talk to yourself matters, right? If you call yourself a loser, that's going to shape how you view yourself, and it's going to shape your mental and emotional well-being, which is the point of us being here. So if you're looking for that TikTok, I realize I never actually said it. It is hidingbehindgod.tiktok.com. So I want to share 2 studies with you. One, there was a guy who wrote a sales book, and he had studies done where they had salespeople go out. I've talked about this study a bit in the past. They had salespeople go out and say to themselves, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, 3 times out loud into a mirror before they went into wherever it was they were going to try and close the deal. And with every one of them who did that regularly, within 2 weeks, their close rate went up. Now, it didn't make really bad close rates great. It didn't make, medium close rates great, but it did move them up. It moved really bad to medium, and medium to good, and good to better, and better to great. And it was literally the only change they made was how they talked to themselves. And they've redone that study multiple times, and every time it comes out the same way, because how you talk to yourself shapes your reality. This is really important because we're going to get into some implications of this in a few minutes beyond just ourselves. But they did another study where they had people who told themselves, I'm a fatty, right? And I know that is not a phrase that we should use today, but it was done for the research. I'm a fatty, or I'm getting fat. They said negative connotations like that to themselves on repeat. and they ate the same amount of calories, the same amount of food as people who said, I'm losing weight. And people lost weight. Now, here's the thing, it wasn't a big variance. So they did a similar study where they had people say, well, I'm just a fat. All right, stuff like that. And they had people say, well, I'm losing weight. And then they looked at the food choices that they made. So they drew up food plans, but they told the people, just eat whatever you want, but here's a food plan you could follow. People who talked to themselves that they were losing weight, that they were going to change themselves, chose healthier food 87% of the time. It's wild to me how we talk to ourselves matters. How you talk to yourself literally shapes how you view reality, and it shapes your reality. And so, let's just think about the implications of this for a minute. If you are constantly ruminating and talking to yourself about how hard life is, you're going to find hard things in life. You're going to probably have less of a positive mindset. You're probably going to have less of a winsome mindset and emotion, because you're just going to kind of be like Eeyore, constantly thinking about how hard life is. Now, look, by bringing in Eeyore, I'm not trying to deflect how hard life can be. But if we ruminate on just that, on how hard life can be, if that becomes our habit of thinking, it will shape our reality to believe that life is just hard and there's nothing we can do about it. And we know that's not accurate. We know that even though, yes, life is hard, there are many things that we can do about it, many things that we should do about it. And by not doing those things, we literally can create our own trap that we're stuck in by how we talk to ourselves about life. Life is so hard. You see this in politics right now. There's all sorts of things going on with politics. But one of my all-time favorite videos or series of videos is to go on YouTube and watch them do man on the street interviews, where they go find someone who doesn't like Trump, but does like Obama or Biden or Gavin Newsom or somebody like that. And they'll quote Gavin Newsom or that person, but they will attribute it to Trump. And immediately the person's like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And then they're like, well, if Gavin Newsom said it, would you appreciate that? And then they flip it, right? They go find somebody that loves Trump but can't stand Gavin, and they do the same thing. And that is because what happens is we have this confirmation bias that runs, and it runs off of our internal dialogue. And it's just easier to say, well, that person's evil, right? My Democrat friends tell me that Trump's evil. My Republican friends tell me that Gavin's evil. And I live in this world where I'm like, maybe they're both just really flawed people. And then people get mad. Which, if you know me, you know I'm relatively okay with people getting mad. I did get deleted this week, though, for something I said, not about politics. It was about a church thing. And somebody got a comment in and then just deleted, sent me a message, and then blocked me. Which, hey, whatever. I keep wanting to read you guys. This is way ADHD, but I do keep wanting to read you guys a letter I got probably about a month ago now. A woman wrote in and she said, I just listened to your podcast episode. I don't remember which one. But she was telling me that basically she thought I was just stupid. She was like, it's just the dumbest podcast, dumbest topic, dumbest things I've ever heard. I actually went and looked you up because I figured you had to be good looking in order for people to listen to this drivel. And she's like, no, you're actually ugly and funny looking. And I keep debating if I should read it or not. She gave me her full name. Like, I could give you her full name and the city she lives in. I don't think I'll do that. I don't know. I'm torn. But back to what we're here to talk about today. Our words shape our world, and they shape our reflection of our world, or how we view our world. Mark Batterson points out in one of his books that when you talk, you're literally shaping your world. And so what I want to do today is I want to ask you a question. If you were to record yourself and just rate the language that you're talking for positive or negative. Now, look, I am not a guy that is Pollyannic. I am not a guy that is like, oh, well, everything's just great. Let's just, put a little bit of butter on it and life will be wonderful. But at the same time, we do have to look at the world truly and really, right? Accurately, if you will. And so when we do that, we can accept that life is hard. I'm sitting right now with people in really hard situations. And I tell them all the time, your ticket to freedom is your ability to accept what is going on in your life. And you need to talk to yourself with language of acceptance. This is really hard but I can still tell an amazing story with my life. I can still live true to my character. I can still live a life that is meaningful. This is very hurtful, but it doesn't have to define me. This is very painful, but it doesn't have to define me. Instead, I will be defined by, and then fill that in with truth. I am very frustrated by this person, but I can still treat them kindly. I am very bothered by this person's ideology, but I can still treat them kindly. I think that there are a lot of logical fallacies in what this person is espousing, but I can still talk to them kindly. Now, look, that does not mean that you don't call out things like, hey, I think that this is wrong. I do that. That's what got me deleted this week. I think that specialty groups and churches need far more supervision than they currently have, because people are getting blown up and destroyed by them. And one of the things that we're not talking about in church circles, and if you're not a church person, this is going to bother you a little bit, because I'm not trying to proselytize you, I promise. But one of the things that we're not talking about is how churches are just fertile ground for narcissists. Churches are just fertile ground for people who are not good people, right? They're on power trips. And these specialty small groups are really fertile ground for those things. And we need to talk about that. So I suggest we just shut them down until we come up with a better system to monitor that, a better system to view what's going on in those people's lives. And people get mad when I say that. But here's the thing, we've got to speak up for the people who are being hurt. And I've just decided I'm going to talk to myself in a way that says, if you get mad at me for that, so be it. If you get mad at me for that, so be it. Because how I talk to myself is going to shape my world, and it's going to reflect my world. So I want to listen to what I'm saying. I want to listen for how often I use victim language, and then I want to change that. Now, there is a difference between having something bad happening to you and using victim language, right? So I can't say, well, I just do this because my parents did blah, blah, blah. That's victim language. I can say I do this because that's what we did when I was a kid growing up, and now I need to change it. Do you see the difference? There's a shift there from this is what I do because of my ecosystem that I grew up in, but now I'm shifting to this. And this is where grace for yourself comes in, because that shift is going to be slow. It's not going to be straight. I was working with a couple one time, and they had like 6 kids under 8. It was wild, right? Like I can only imagine what their bedtime hour was like at their home. And when we were talking, one of the things that the husband kept saying to me was, well, when we're trying to do these things, it's kind of up and down. It's up and down. And I'm like, bro, that's life. That is life. And so when we do that, when we can talk to ourselves, say, you know what, this is hard, but it's just a stage. This is life. I have 7 kids under 8. That changes how we view our reality. Now, it doesn't change the hard facts of the reality. But as M. Scott Peck said, and for longtime listeners, I've quoted him to you many times, when we can accept that life is hard, it doesn't change how hard life is, but it helps us transcend the fact that it's hard, because our language shapes how we view reality. And our shaping of that reality comes from our habitual talking to ourselves. We know this in psychology for years. For years, there was research that said, well, it's still there, but we tend to discount it now because we want medicine. We want a quicker fix. The biggest factor in your emotions is your habits of thinking. In fact, there's multiple theories that revolve around it. Your habits of thinking lead to your beliefs lead to your feelings lead to your emotions lead to your moods. And if you want to change those, you have to go after your habits of thinking. That's where you dig in, right? So think about the guy who is dissatisfied with his wife, his marriage. And he talks all the time about what his wife isn't. When he comes into my room, one of the things that I'll ask him is, what are all the things your wife is? I want you to make a list of that. And I want that list to grow. Now, here's the thing. He still gets to address what he finds dissatisfactory in his marriage. I'm not arguing for this, just ignore things. But I am saying that he has to look at his language. He has to listen to his language and ask himself, what is the habit of language that I'm using, and how is it shaping my view of my world? So I do this to myself all the time. I listen for, where am I using language that I don't agree with. And where I really upset people is there are certain words that are like, oh, you shouldn't say those. I don't worry about those words. I worry about words like makes me. I worry about words that talk about how hard life is without a and at the end of it. Life is hard, and I'm going to keep going. And I'm going to keep doing what I know I need to be doing. Where are those? Where is the next? Because if we just stop in the hard, we're in trouble. If you think about gratitude journals, and there's a ton of research that talks about how gratitude journals are very helpful to people. What does a gratitude journal do? It forces you to have habits of thinking that revolve around things that you're grateful for. And when you're grateful for something, suddenly your world isn't quite as hard or isn't quite as bad, even though it is just as hard as it was before you made the gratitude journal. And I do this. The other night I woke up and I was just like, man, there's a lot going on in my life that I don't control right now. There's a lot, to be honest with you, this is just, I'm not at a place where I'm willing to share it yet. There's a lot going on in my life that is deeply painful. Okay, so what's my gratitude? Well, I'm thankful for my wife. I'm thankful for my kids. I'm thankful that my daughter just married a good guy. I'm thankful that we have a roof over our head. Like I start making this list in my bed in the dark, and then I fell asleep and I slept like a baby. It was awesome. Right? Because that's the power of checking our words, right? There was an ancient writer who said, guard your heart because from it is the wellspring of life. And what does that mean? Well, part of guarding your heart is what are you thinking about? What are you talking to yourself about? So do an audit over the next week. Listen to words that are disempowering. Listen for words that are not accurate. On the worship thing, kind of tying the end here to the beginning. On the worship thing, I was hanging out with some pastors a couple weeks ago, and I kind of went on a little rant about it. And the one pastor said, but that's how people understand music. Right, because pastors have done a poor job of teaching the truth. If pastors actually taught, hey, we're going to sing, and that's praising, and praising is part of worship, you could see the world change. And you can do this in your family. You hear your kids always complaining, listen to your own words. Listen for how often you complain. And I'm not saying don't observe things that are difficult. Observe them, but then talk about solutions. And if you don't have a solution, I don't have a solution right now, but I'm confident that I'll be able to find one. Talk to yourself in a way that accepts reality and talks about what should be. So on the whole makes me, well, that makes me angry. I tell my kids, you can't say that. You can say this happened and I felt. And here's what happens when people buy into this. It's like a person who used to smoke cigarettes and now they don't. They hear it all the time and they twitch. And it's awesome. It's awesome because that's literally how a transformation occurs. That's how a revolution happens. Because then people are like, wait, actually, you know something? Let me ask you a question. Do you think that really makes you? Or is maybe there a middle step there where something you believe about what's going on is what's creating your emotion? It doesn't make you, your belief about it. You know, I talk to guys who don't know anything about hunting and they want to get into it as adults. I love hunting, so I love to have that conversation. And then they start talking to themselves in a negative way because they didn't see anything. Well, did you control the things that you control? Did you do scent control? And then people are like, other hunters are like, well, scent control. And some of you, I just lost it. I know because it's a little bit nerding out. Scent control is silly. Just play the wind. Well, I hunt small parcels. I can't play the wind. I don't. If I just played the wind, I'd only hunt a couple times a year because of just things out of my control. So what do I control? How do I talk to myself? One of my beefs with how we do our education system is we punish failure and reward success, when in reality, if we want to create people that are risk takers and entrepreneurs, we should be using language and systems that rewards failure that tries. And you can see this. You can see some teachers, they're trying to bring language in that rewards that celebrates that. And hopefully that becomes a fire that spreads across our nation. In your marriage, most of your language, is it about what you don't like or what you do like? With your job. When you got your job, most people were excited to get their job. And then after time, they start talking about how hard it is. I see this all the time with people who go back to school to get a job, especially when they go back to school to get a job in the medical field. Like, because that's hard. They go to school, they go do all the work. And then what happens is they get a job and then they're talking about how hard it is and how tired they are and how exhausting it is. And it's just so difficult. But you literally spent thousands of dollars, and not as an 18-year-old, as an adult, to go get this degree so you could go work in this field. Yeah, it's hard, but doing the hard work is a privilege. What would happen if you changed your language to that? Doing that hard work as a language. I'm going to give you an example of this from my own life that is going to involve hunting. So if you are anti-hunting, you might as well just turn me off. A number of years ago, probably, more than a decade, I was incredibly frustrated because I went hunting one night, and as I was coming out of the woods, I saw a deer that would have filled my freezer, and I was just like, "Rawr." And a guy that I know said to me, "That's why you play the game." And I was like, holy cow, it is. Yes, I want to fill my freezer. Yes, I want to feed my family meat that isn't, grocery store meat. But really, it is just a game I'm playing. It is, we're not going to go hungry if I don't get a deer. That perspective change has stayed with me for the last 15 years. Perspective is almost always a result of our words. And so we need to listen to our words for words that are disempowering, for words that don't make us live in truth, that don't push us to live in truth, that don't see the whole picture, and then we need to make adjustments. That's how we have perspective shifts. So I'd love to know for you, what are words that you're just like, oh, you can't say that. My wife and I did a TikTok video about this, about how my kids can't say that. And my oldest daughter commented, she said, unfortunately, I still can't hear people say that and not cringe. And I wanted to say, oh, wait, it's actually what you believe about them saying that creates the cringe. Right? Because here's the thing. If we are vigilant about our words, if we are vigilant about how we talk to ourselves, we will be able to change our perspective. We're not going to change how hard things are sometimes, but we can change our relationship to how hard things are. And that can be so freeing. Write into me. Tell me, what do you do when life gets hard? What's your language look like? If you want more steps on how to do this, let me know. Reach out to me. You can find me all over the internet, joemartino.com. I am joemartino.substack.com. If you know me, you probably have my cell phone number. You can tweet at me, all that good stuff. I'd love to maybe explore this more with you this year, because I cannot tell you how important this is to healthy and whole living. Listen, thanks so much for listening. If this helped you, would you do me a favor? Would you share it with 2 or 3 of your friends, one of your friends? I can't tell you how helpful that is to me as I pursue publishers. And it might help them because, let's be honest, we all have hard things in life. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you next week.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please share with a friend. And hey, give us that rating in your podcast store. Until next time, change possible.